Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by BKCW. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Be sure to tell us where you're checking in from this morning, what you're drinking. Get your questions in. We're going to get to all those here in just a little bit. But first, guys, let's talk a little Texas football. And they actually put out a video that I want to share with everybody this morning.
Yeah, they put this out on social media. They had a little practice, as Jerry called it, under the lights last night. Number 4, I think, is Jelani McDonald. There's Trey Moore, Trevor Gooseby. Let's see about James Simon. That's a new look right there. 13 is Zealous Hicks going through it. That's Trey Weiser's new number as well. Good look at a lot of the guys. Arch and Trey here dropping back. I'm doing a little play-by-play of practice, Jerry. What do you think? 6 is Kobe Black now. Is that right? I think.
I think so. Yeah. So I mean, look, it's more of the practice stuff going on this spring, and it leads into visitors on campus watching these practices, which we'll get to in a second, which I think may be more impactful than the practices themselves this weekend is getting some kids on campus for the first time in a while. So this practice, Felix Ojo watched this practice, one of the top offensive linemen on the board, obviously tackle from Lake Ridge, but more of the seeing Dwayne Aquino on the field, some of the new coaches on the field as well. So spring ball going right now, trying to keep as many of these guys healthy as possible. That's almost one of my things right now is keeping these guys healthy.
That is from the Texas football Twitter. Make sure you guys follow that. If you do follow things on Twitter, that's a must follow. Hey, Jerry, talking about football a little bit, I think it's important we lead maybe with, you were talking about a high school recruit in Felix Ojo. Texas continues its pursuit of Stanford transfer portal edge, David Bailey. I got an update late last night that Bailey is allegedly at this point down to Texas and Texas Tech. It appears, according to his representation, that UCLA is just about all but out of it at this point. Texas and Texas Tech. Texas Tech, according to my source, was hoping for an answer from Bailey last night. Not sure they got it, but we will see what happens here with this situation. But Texas going down to the wire for a guy that, Jerry, we talked about it. If Texas can get a 7-sack guy from a Division I team, we will see what happens and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they're going after an edge player because they think he's a difference maker, and I think David Bailey is a difference maker, which makes him a high priority even for Texas in a loaded position, and even higher priority for a Texas Tech who's trying to pull off an Arizona State feat this year, right? And that's get to the playoff from the Big 12. And they're trying to do it through the portal. Arizona State didn't necessarily do it that way. So it's a big recruitment for both schools, actually, because, look, the reality is, and I'm going to say this again, people are like, why does Texas need an edge? Well, Colton Vossick's injured. I mean, he's out this spring. It's as talented, as good a player as he is, it's hard to say, oh, we got Vossick, we're ready to roll. You don't know health-wise with Colton Vossick. You know he's a really good player, but he's just hadn't been able to stay healthy. And you know that won't be your last injury at the position. And then the guy's a really good player as a top 3-round draft pick. So you better go after him if you're trying to have the best team you can have this year. And he's one of those last remaining potential 4 key pieces out of the portal, an edge player, a wide receiver, a tight end, and an interior defensive lineman who's a disruptor. I mean, the Texas is trying to hit some home runs right now, not swing for singles to complete this team and give it the best chance to maximize next year, while also understanding there's going to be injuries along the way. Look at the injuries this spring already.
Jordan Washington being out is a problem for Texas.
Ryan Wingo. I mean, like, 2 potential starters are out. And Colton Vossick, if he's your third edge in the rotation, he's out this spring. I mean, so you better keep going on and bringing in guys, especially if you think they're difference makers.
Yeah. Well, also on tap for today at 6:00 tonight,
Huge.
The women's basketball game are getting started. They go up against the South Carolina Gamecocks in the great city of Tampa, Florida. The Longhorns, the underdog, unusual position for them, but the ladies and Coach Vic Schaefer will get after it later tonight around 6 o'clock. We wish them absolutely nothing but the best. Coach Schaefer was on earlier this week. Jerry, you're a basketball nut a little bit. I watched the women's team and stuff. What do you think that they need to do in this game against South Carolina to get to the point where they might be able to play for a national championship tomorrow?
By the way, that line's moved from 4.5 to 5.5. So a lot of money going to South Carolina. Look, I think we know what South Carolina is going to do. They're going to pack the paint. They have the interior to slow down the Texas interior game theoretically on paper. We'll see what little minor coaching maneuvers each one makes tonight, because they have seen each other 3 times this year. So there's not a lot of secrets from a personnel and scheme standpoint. Will somebody go off script a little bit? We'll see. Dawn Staley said, not about this game, but she recently said, it comes down to execution and the 50-50 plays and the broken plays and who's going to make those plays. And I think in a game like this, she's largely correct. On the Texas side, I mean, Shea Holley or Jordan Lee's going to need to shoot the ball well tonight, in my estimation, because South Carolina is going to say, make some shots, make some perimeter shots. And if you do that, then we'll adjust what we're going to do against you. And so I think that's the key for anybody that can be in a talent neutralized situation against this Texas women's team, is pack the paint and say, you know what, y'all shoot 30%, 29% from 3, have at it, and I'll adjust when we have to adjust. That's the way I'd play Texas right now if I was an opponent, and take away the inside and try to limit Maddie Booker in the 15 to 17-foot range, knowing she's going to get her shots up and score points, but you just don't want her to have a 28, 30-point game if you're playing against Texas. I think if you're Texas, Fool Wiley, I think, look, limiting her. South Carolina is going to score in the paint, even as good as Texas is. They have really good players. I think don't let Fool Wiley have a big game against you tonight. And Texas has done a really good job in the tournament defending the 3-point line against teams who are really good 3-point shooting teams. So you can't let your guard down against South Carolina. Fool Wiley can fill it up. I think if they limit Fool Wiley tonight, that's gonna put a lot of pressure on some other players offensively. Just don't let her have the big night, in my estimation. So if Texas women make enough perimeter shots tonight, they're going to have a chance. I think they're going to have a real chance to play for their second national championship in program history.
NCAA national championship, by the way. Yeah. They won it before the women's program was in the NCAA, I believe, before they combined all the sports. Hey, thinking about this, baseball also hosts a big one this week. Blake, they've got the Georgia coming to town. We'll have Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball on here in a little bit. He's a really high-level guy in that industry, and somebody that can talk about what Jim Schlossnagle has done with the Texas Longhorn baseball program and just the abrupt turn or change. Texas goes into this series with an 8-1 record in the SEC. But really, Jerry, I don't want to say we buried the lead, but Texas basketball got big-time news yesterday with the announcement of 2 players that will be returning for 2025-2026.
Yeah, so what I think Texas has done a good job of now with Dalen Swain was the number 1 guy in the portal from Xavier for, as hard as that for some people to believe, for Sean Miller. And Dalen Swain's actually being in some 2026 first-round NBA mock drafts. The NBA really likes Dalen Swain. So they got that out of the way. They got Dalen Swain. And then they have he's settled the baseline of the roster, the baseline of this roster really well. Tremont Mark announced he's coming back next year. I think he could be a 15-point per game scorer, really good player in Sean Miller's offensive system. And he'll do it as a combo guard. Then Jordan Pope returns. I think we'll have probably a prominent role off the bench as a scorer, as a combo guard, but as a shooter scorer who I think will also benefit from Sean Miller Miller's offensive style. We expect Kendall Weaver to come back. So you added Dalen Swain to that. And then the 3 young bigs in the program, which I think will be key. Texas is going to – I'll get into what they're still going to add. But Nick Cody in year 2, 6'8.5", 6'9". Jamie Vinson, 6'10.5" in year 2. And John Clark, the high school player who's injured vast majority of his senior year. He broke his pinky in his shooting hand and had to have surgery. Tried to play a little bit, but it just wasn't working. 6'8.5", 6'9", trained with TJ Ford. Really skilled kid, got a bright future. He'll be on the squad as well. They essentially have 5 scholarship spots left. I think 4 of those guys will probably impact the team this year. I think maybe a developmental 5th, the high school or international ranks. But it comes, I think this is the baseline's been set. It's a pretty good baseline to start with. Now these last 4 additions, I think, will tell the story on this year's team. And then also hoping a couple of those guys are multi-year players as well for future building in the program. So I think, look, they're off to a really good start. Tremont Mark had a little minor shoulder surgery yesterday. He posted that on IG. He posted on Twitter, I think, the day before. So Texas has their baseline of this roster set. And now these last 4 pieces, I think, will be pretty crucial, not just to this year's team, because it'll be 2 guards and 2 bigs, those last 2 spots. But then it'll also be for the future of this program. So I think if there's 4 spots left, I think you'll probably see 2 guys be underclassmen that they can build with, and then 2 guys that may be in that 4th-year senior, 5th-year senior type of range. We'll see how it works out. But the dead period goes through April 7th. There will not be any other official visitors from the portal until after that dead period lifts. And then I think you'll see Texas bring in a few guys. And there's a couple of high school guys and international guys that are out there as well. But I think those would be more developmental long-term pieces.
Okay, guys, before we move on, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone how they can escape the insurance trap.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Blake. Look, all season long, you've heard us talk about how Longhorn-owned BKCW helps you escape the insurance trap. You know the drill. If you own a business, renewal time rolls around, you scramble for quotes, and unfortunately, you end up stuck with a higher price. BKCW helps you break that cycle. They'll dive deep into your past claims, assess your risk, and deploy tools to make your company safer. They'll bring you the most competitive pricing options available. With BKCW, the goal is simple: help make you and your employees safer so you can save money and hopefully experience fewer claims. If you want to learn more about what BKCW can provide you and your business, go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started. Get the support you deserve and escape the insurance trap. Just don't keep paying those increased premiums year after year.
Jerry, we've been talking basketball, but what about A&M basketball? Do you have a update there?
Yeah. I don't buy in words, but we do in pictures. So, Blake, what's the update on the coaching search at A&M in basketball? There it is.
Kirby.
Now, all right, next. Special guest now.
Yeah, let's bring him in. Kendall Rogers, D1 Baseball. Kendall, how you doing this morning, buddy?
I'm doing outstanding. How about you guys?
Good. We're talking a little Longhorn baseball just a few minutes ago. We appreciate you joining us. You are all things baseball. I think you still based out of Austin, Kendall?
No, I live in Spring now.
What's that?
I live in Spring now.
You're down in Spring? I had a question for you, Kendall. Jim Schlossnagle. Yeah, Jim Schlossnagle took over a Texas program. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say it was reeling under David Pierce, but the trajectory didn't quite fit the level of expectations in Austin. I think that's probably fair to say. What is your take on what he's been able to do so quickly? And has that been surprising for what he's done in Austin?
Yeah, I honestly don't think it's been that surprising. I mean, I think we had Texas right inside the top 20 coming this season. I think we all as a staff thought that Texas is one of those teams, like the ceiling for this club is really high. I thought the floor was in a good spot, but I thought this team had a chance to do some pretty special things. But, you just never know in a first season as a coach, as we're seeing around college baseball with some new coaches. It's not always easy. And so, you don't know if when Schloss, takes his system, his, mental training, his culture and things like that over to a new program, you just don't know how kids are going to react, and whether it's football, basketball, baseball. But it's very clear that team is all in. I mean, if you watch that team during games, even when they're down, like every player on the bench is engaged. I actually think it's really cool that, the LSU series when I was there, that Jonah Williams is really engaged. I mean, to be a two-sport star like that and to literally be in on every single pitch when you're not even playing, to me, just gives you a really good idea of where that program is culturally. So that's the biggest thing for me, is he's been able to change that culture overnight. And that matters when you're dealing with a team that, offensively has elite players, pitching-wise. There's guys like Jared and Ruger and Dylan Volantis, et cetera, who are really good players, really good pitchers. But, I think we would all agree that, Texas' best days from a pitching talent standpoint is probably 2 years down the road and not necessarily in the present.
Hey, Kendall, I want to ask you this.
Sure.
Covering the SEC baseball for many years now, where does this league rank this year compared to some other years? Because it sure seems to be a total beast.
It is a beast. And when you look at the bottom of this conference, I mean, think of the teams talent-wise that are sitting at 1-8. Mississippi State, I think, actually is a really good team that, and again, I don't want to bag on the Big 12, but I mean, if you put them in the Big 12, they're probably 4th or 5th place. Instead, they're 1-8 in the Southeastern Conference. A&M, for as bad as they've been at times, I mean, that's still a premier talented team. So, I mean, they're sitting at 1-8, and they've got to go to Tennessee this weekend. Florida is 1-8, and I think we would all agree that Florida is one of the premier talented teams in college baseball. So that just gives you an idea of the margin for error in this conference is just so small. But I mean, you look at the teams at the top. I mean, it's like, Tennessee's been incredible. LSU is LSU, and for Texas in year one to be right up there with those teams, that's pretty special. Because I think we all would agree. I mean, that this is not a team that the last couple of games of the LSU series, this is not a team that just happened to fall into a series win over LSU. Like, it wasn't one of those things where, LSU was just god awful and Texas, played like it was a Super Bowl. No, that they took it to them and won that series. So to be in the discussion with those clubs is a pretty big deal, I feel like, in year one.
You showed those rankings Blake did to folks, the D1 Baseball, which is the company you work for. You guys got into live broadcast this year. I thought that was very cool. Neat of you guys to do, Kendall. I looked at that list, 8 of the top 10 from the SEC. To your point, that's just the only other 2 were both from the ACC. Where is Stanford, USC, UCLA, those former baseball powers? Are they just out of it these days? I mean, is it all the SEC and maybe the ACC now that rules college baseball?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I would agree with that. I think as you look at consolidation and conferences, the ACC and SEC just have a stranglehold on this sport. But I mean, when you look at UCLA, I mean, they've actually done a pretty good job this year. I mean, they're sitting in the top 15 right now. John Savage had a couple of, I wouldn't say just totally down years, but a couple of years where it's not the standard that you're speaking of here. Stanford's kind of been in and out of the rankings. USC, probably a borderline postseason team at this point. The problem the USC has had, and this kind of takes us back into this whole SEC discussion, and I would argue kind of the same things happen in football. The problem that you have out there in California is a lot of these kids, whether they go to Austin, Baton Rouge, et cetera, on recruiting visits, they're like, why do I want to stay and play in front of like 900 people at USC when I can go to LSU, Texas, A&M, et cetera, and play in front of 8,000 people and the atmosphere is incredible. I'm going to have 30 scouts at every single game. So the thing that's hurt these West Coast schools is a lot of these kids are seeing this and they're like, man, why would I stay here when I can go to, the old school AL East of college baseball? And that's kind of what's happened.
Hey, Kendall, I got a question for you. Football and basketball are getting so much of the conversation with this House settlement agreement potentially going through this next week. The baseball coaches you're talking to, what are their thoughts on it, and how's that going to change the game for them from an NIL perspective?
Yeah, it's from talking to the different coaches at different schools. It sounds like a lot of schools, from the revenue sharing standpoint, are going to be in kind of that $200,000 to $300,000 range. I mean, it's going to vary quite severely from school to school, but that's where those teams typically are in the bigger conferences. I think the biggest thing is just from a scholarship standpoint, what this House settlement will to and kind of the fallout from it is, you're going to have programs like Texas go from 11-7 to probably 34 fulls. And what's going to be interesting is do not look at the actual number of scholarships. So, for instance, I think something, I don't know if it leaked out or if Texas put it out. So I don't want to say for sure that Texas put it out, but I saw somebody put out a chart of what UT was going to do from a scholarship standpoint for every sport. And so I don't think the number was 34 on that, but I think what schools are going to do is they're going to put out, hey, we're going to offer 25 scholarships in baseball out of the 34 potentials. And what they're going to do is they're going to find ways to stack and et cetera to get to 34. So you're going to see all these SEC schools say, hey, we're going to have 24, 25. But in reality, they're going to get pretty close to 34, especially when you throw the NIL component at it, which in a place like Texas is pretty substantial. So I think the coaches as a whole are like a lot of college athletics coaches and ADs. They're a little apprehensive about it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a really good thing for college baseball and player acquisition. There's no question about that.
Let me ask you this, because I think it's funny. Look, with the House settlement, and it's supposed to be fair market value, and all this stuff. Okay, baseball, even more than football or basketball, some players are making hundreds of thousands of dollars to play for a baseball team. You're telling me a whole roster's NIL under the House settlement may be $300,000 or $400,000.
Yeah, it could be like in the revenue sharing component. Absolutely.
Yeah. How is that going to really mesh? I mean, are these?
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's
like
football is going to be 2x. If you're going to pay $15 million, you're going to try to get that group to $30 million or whatever it is for an A&M or a Texas or an OU or whoever. Baseball, you're going to go from 300,000 to 3 million. That's a 10x number. How are they? Have you heard any thoughts on how coaches and programs are going to kind of try to maneuver in that gray area, at least?
I feel like
Texas's roster in NIL and A&M's in baseball is not $300,000 right now. I mean, players exceeding that.
Yeah, I mean, you got A&M sitting at 1-8, and I would say their roster is probably like $2.5 million in NIL money this year. So, yeah, I feel like college athletics as a whole, this NIL stuff and whatnot, I feel like we're almost like playing with like funny money, like money that we just printed off a machine that's not real money. Like it's like at some point, as they say, they used to say this all the time in East Texas, at some point the chickens come home to roost. And that's kind of what's going to happen here at some point, because it does none of it makes sense. But the other thing that I think is important about NIL and about some of these changes that I'm not confident about is this new, Deloitte clearinghouse we're doing with the NCAA, where they're basically going to, if Arch Manning gets an NIL deal, they're basically going to determine whether or not it's legitimate or not, or whether or not he deserves that money. Well, and the reason why I thought about this is because you talk about fair market value. Well, if Tito's Vodka comes in and says, hey, we think Arch Manning's worth $5 million a year, right? Well, who is Deloitte and the NCAA to say, well, you're not worth that? No, your market value is what someone's willing to pay you to promote their product. That is your market value. It's not what some arbitrary organization said it's worth. So that's where I think a huge gray area is.
Yeah, and I would not be surprised if that's one of the things that get going. Jerry had to step away to take a phone call. He'll be right back in just a second. Kendall, I want to ask you, we've talked at length about Michael Early and what's gone on over at A&M after leaving Jim Schlossnagle leaving. Mm-hmm. What is going on? Just to give people, because frankly, I'll be honest, we kind of make light of it over here. That's the nature of the beast. It is
as honestly as people should. I mean, that's a team that was preseason number 1. They had every amount of talent that you need to win at a high level, and they've totally squandered it. I mean, they should be heavily criticized, and we've done the same thing. I think the biggest thing for them is they had a really good fall. They looked all. I mean, when I saw them in the fall against Houston, like even Todd Whitting, the Houston head coach, was like, dude, it was like we were playing a AAA team. I think A&M, the game I went to, A&M beat them like 22-1 in 7 innings or something. They stopped the game because they were beating them so bad. And they didn't even have I think Grahovic was out, and I think Lavalette was out, and they still beat them like that. So I think what's happened is they had a system under Schloss to where, you know, it was a very kind of strict organization. You know, everything from practice to in-game management was very structured, very like just dialed in. And I think what happens is, or what's happened is, that with each month and each week they've gotten away from that. They've just kind of pushed away from that culture and that overall approach. And that stuff matters. I know we all kind of laugh at the, you know, oh, the mental training stuff, stupid, and being, you know, particular about, you know, how we structure practice can be kind of silly. But I mean, it does matter, and you're seeing that with A&M. And so I think what's happened is, you know, let's be honest here. I mean, they started out of the gate pretty slow. They started struggling. And the problem is with a team like that, even if you're really talented, you're still dealing with 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, you know, that, you know, I wouldn't say they're fragile, but I'm like, if you start losing, at some point you start believing that you're not very good. And I think that's kind of what's happened to them, is they started believing they're not a very good baseball team. And when you do that in the SEC, you're screwed. And so that's kind of what's happened with them. But there's no doubt. I mean, early, I will say this about the A&M job. I would be very surprised if we're sitting here and they do not make the NCAA tournament, which I don't see how they're going to do it. They still have Texas, Arkansas, by the way, both on the road, Georgia on the road, LSU, and they are at Tennessee this weekend. Like, I don't see how they get to 12 wins in conference. If that happens, I'm almost certain they will make a move in year one.
I was going to say, is it possible they go out and lose this series, don't win a game this series? Is he gone mid-year?
I don't think they'll do that. It's kind of like one of those things. It's like, you know, if you get rid of a guy like that in year one or mid-year in his first year, it's kind of like you're dancing on his grave a little bit, because, like, you know, I get that, you know, CDC, I always feel like does a really good job on coaching hires of, like, if he's going to fire a guy or he knows somebody's leaving, like, he has that person lined up like within 24 hours. But the reality is, in this situation, you're not going to be able to do that. But, you know, if you fire a coach mid-year, so it's like, you know, let him finish the season and then reevaluate. But I would be very surprised if they do not make the NCAA tournament, if they don't make a move over there.
Hey, I got a question from the chat, which I think is a good one. I think it's almost too tough to answer, but if you have an answer, it's going to be awesome. Hey, it was from Blake. David Keith Williams. Can you ask Kendall Rogers who he thinks the most talented baseball team in the nation is? He said LSU or Tennessee. I actually think it might be LSU. Do you have one, or is it just too close?
I think it's Tennessee. I really do. That's actually an awesome question, but I would lean with the Vols. I just think when you look at their, you know, rotation, I mean, Liam Doyle is going to be a top 2-round pick as their Friday guy. You know, their bullpen with Nate Steed and guys like that. I mean, it's elite of the elite. And then offensively up and then that lineup, it's really good. I just think, you know, and I think, well, I guess when Texas plays Tennessee in the postseason, but I mean, I think people will see if you watch Tennessee versus LSU. I just feel like the star power offensively, top to bottom, is just a little bit more impactful than LSU. I actually thought LSU against Texas, I felt like their middle to bottom of the lineup, I mean, was just okay. Like, it was, I don't feel like, you know, Max Weiner was going, oh, God, we got to face this guy. Whereas Tennessee, it's like their 7-hole hitter might be, Dalton Bargo, who could take one out of the yard at any time.
All right. Last question. Texas has Georgia this week.
Yeah.
This weekend, starting today. What are your thoughts on this series matchup and what you're looking for from Texas versus the Bulldogs?
Yeah, you know, I know a lot of people are going to pick Georgia because Max is out, but I actually picked Texas in this. I think Jim's teams historically have done a really nice job of rallying around injuries. You know, you even think of last year after losing Braden Montgomery at A&M and losing Shane Sadeo, both in the postseason, they go on a run in Omaha and almost win the whole thing. And so I think Texas actually plays really well this weekend. I actually think the weather really favors Texas here because Georgia is one of those teams with Rylan Zaborowski and Robbie Burnett and guys like that. They I wouldn't say their offense is predicated on home runs, but they're one of those teams that's kind of how they get rolling a little bit. Is, you know, they'll get a couple of guys on and somebody will hit a 3-run jack. Whereas the next 2 days, I want to say on Sunday, I think the wind shifts in Austin, but these next 2 days, I mean, the wind's blowing it like 20 to 30 miles an hour. And I think we all know what typically happens there. So I think that favors a Texas team who would be a little bit undermanned than usual offensively. But with Georgia, again, they're one of those teams that if you give them free passes, I mean, they will make your life a living hell. And I feel like Wes Johnson and staff have done a really good job in the transfer portal in terms of evaluations. I just mentioned Burnett. He was a UNCG kid. Zaborowski, if you go look at his stats at Miami, Ohio, they weren't very good. And he's done a really nice job with him as a power hitter. So, Texas and Georgia, I feel like both of them aren't kind of where they would like to be depth-wise, talent and depth-wise on the mound. And I think the differentiator is just, one team's at home and the weather, kind of favors the home team in this one.
Biggest surprise, last question, I'm sorry. Biggest surprise for Texas this year for you?
I would go with just the overall impact of Dylan Volantis. When I saw him in the fall, I really liked him. But it's one thing to look really good in the fall when it's me and like 3 scouts, but it's another to go out there in the Southeastern Conference and have the poise that he has on the mound and also show the stuff and just the ability to make big pitches in big situations that he does. That's really incredible. And, I think back to the LSU series, watching him against Derek Curiel for LSU. I mean, that might be the two most just mature, beyond their years freshmen that I've seen in college baseball in a couple of years. It's just really impressive how he, gets on the mound and just looks, dialed in. He looks like a guy that's been doing this at the SEC level for 10 years, and instead he's in his 3rd month.
I can't let you out of here without asking this question because I asked Sloss the other day, thoughts on torpedo bats and everything going on with it.
Oh boy. Yeah. You know what? I don't know all the details of the torpedo bats, but I know, it's funny you mentioned that because, college baseball the last couple of years has really had quite a power surge. And so, coaches have always been like, hey, what do you think is the reason why we're seeing all, the significant power, the exit velocities? I mean, go out to the dish and go look at on the board, some of the exit velocities of some of these balls. I mean, I think Galvan hit one against LSU that was 111, 112. I mean, I've seen more guys hit balls in the last 2 years at the college level that have exit velos that are greater than what Aaron Judge is doing. Yeah. And so something is going on. I don't know. Here's my actual theory. I had a pitching coach who actually cut open a ball and looked at it. My theory, in all honesty, they'll never admit this, is remember, was it 4 years ago when Major League Baseball threw out 50,000 baseballs? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think what they did is took the Major League seams and the Major League cover off and then put the college teams and the college cover on those balls. And I think we're just still using them. That's what I think it is. I really do.
Makes sense.
I mean, I'll say this. I like it. I get that's a little bit more dangerous. And that's the main thing that people have an issue with. But people dig long balls, man. We want to go to the dish and see Jalen Flores hit a home run. We want to see Max Ballou put one over the occupied left field guys. That's what we want to see. So I don't have an issue.
Kendall, we live in an offensive world. Everything's about offense. Rules are made for offense in sports. Bottom line.
Nobody wants to watch 1991 A&M versus Texas where they just hand the ball off in football over and over and over. People want to see, Xavier Worthy, going 70 yards.
Yeah. Hey, Kendall, thank you so much. I will say this. You mentioned Dylan Volantis. It was a great segue because he is a Californian that could have went anywhere out west. Decided to go to Texas.
Committed to USC.
Yeah. So
thanks, fellas. Thanks, have a good weekend.
I always love the gear, too, man. That's really good.
You got it, man. Y'all be good. Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Good luck this weekend. All right, that's Kendall Rogers, longtime friend. I've known Kendall for literally since I think he was 15 or 16 years old, and he has always had a passion for baseball and just does a tremendous job for D1 baseball. And has grown up in that sport to become, I think, the authority nationally on college baseball.
He does a great job. He's done a great job with his career.
All right, we got some advertising. We got to pay some bills. Blake, what do we got?
Right, fellas. And I'm going to start by telling everyone out there about Timeline's MitoPure. If you work out, it's a supplement you're going to want to add to your daily regimen because it supports your health at the foundation by encouraging cellular renewal. Even if you don't work out, you should probably look into adding it to your daily routine. It's a precise dose of the rare postbiotic urolithin A, and it works by promoting an essential cellular cleanup process that clears out your cells' battery packs. There's a lot of products out there that claim to make you stronger, claim to pack on muscle, but Timeline's MitoPure is shown to deliver double-digit increase in muscle strength and endurance without a change in exercise. They don't just claim it, they deliver on it. I'm going to tell you personally that I like it because it helps me recover a lot more quickly from workouts. I can tell a tremendous difference with it. I also have a lot more energy because of it. MitoPure is the research-backed innovation that unlocks your fullest potential. Awaken the strength, power, and resilience already in you with the first and only supplement clinically proven to rejuvenate health at the cellular level. And right now, Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure. Just go to timeline.com/ontexas. That's TIMELINE.com/ontexas. And Jerry, what about Mando?
Well, this read is for Atlanta Braves fans to start the season. And it's a little stinky at 0-7, but you have faced the Dodgers and Padres. Why Mando? Mando is a whole body deodorant, safe to use anywhere on your body. Pits, balls, thigh folds, belly buttons, butt cracks, and feet. Tony Hills, I know you're listening. Created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours or for your first 0-7 start to a season. Mando deodorant products options are solid deodorant stick, formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it ever starts, and spray deodorant, which is aluminum-free and ideal for the hard-to-reach places. All products are baking soda-free and paraben-free. Choose from a variety of scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. Clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. The key part of this read, 12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor level is a 5 out of 10. Woo, woo, woo. With Mando, the average grundle level goes down to 0 out of 10. Want to try America's #1 whole body deodorant formula right now? You can find them at Walmart, Target, or other retailers across the country. For the very, very, very best deals, go to shopmando.com. And Mando's starter pack is perfect for all new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and with free shipping. As a special offer for all our listeners here at On Texas Football, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to 40% off your starter pack using code ONTexas, all caps, at shopmando.com. Atlanta Braves fans, A&M basketball search fans.
I like your new sound effects, by the way.
Thank you.
It really sets the read off, in
Yes.
my opinion.
Yes. Hey, by the way, people in the chat think you're looking good in peach, Blake. Tell the watch you did a good job dressing you this morning.
one of my favorite shirts for sure. I love the color. Definitely. All right, Jerry, we haven't talked recruiting.
A lot going on.
Yeah, a lot going on for sure. Got some people visiting. Tell folks about it.
Do we have the Demarion Simeon huddle ready? All right, so
I got it.
I think one of the best defensive linemen in the country, and he's not ranked that way necessarily. The rankings will catch up to the talent, but this is Demarion Simeon from Richland, New Jersey, St. Augustine High, about 6'2.5", 275. He's making his first visit to Texas this weekend, and he's a guy that I think, look at that, athletic, reactive, eyes up, eyes weren't down. This is a guy that I think Texas will set up an official visit with after this weekend, assuming he's 6'2.5", 275, assuming he doesn't show up 6 foot 255, right? I don't think that's going to be the case. Regardless, Tennessee, Ohio State, Penn State, Auburn, A&M, they've all offered him along with Texas. That's the competition. One of the top D linemen, I believe, in the country when all's said and done, making his first unofficial visit to Texas. I think this guy's a disruptive 3, and I think he's a really, really good prospect. Corey Wells from Petal, the defensive lineman that was offered recently, is on campus this weekend for the first time. 6'5", 300 pounds, plays over the ball. Yeah, I think he'll set up an official visit to Texas as well. Then we have some other official visit news that have been set up. I put up the updated list on OnTexasFootball.com. All this recruiting scoops on OnTexasFootball.com right now. But the 2 new official visitors, one of those on the D-line, Kendall Gurville from Fort Myers, June 20th through 22nd, and Kenye Pepe, the offensive tackle at IMG from SoCal, June 20th as well. So 2 more official visitors. And I said Kendall Gurville because another D lineman on campus this weekend for non-officials, James Johnson, who recently moved from North Fort Myers to Miami Northwestern. That doesn't sound good if you're recruiting him outside of Florida or Georgia, honestly. But he is making his first unofficial visit to Texas. That's one I'm not as high on. I think Texas has a lot of ground to make up there with Miami, Florida, Georgia. Penn State and Syracuse are also in it on some level. We'll see if Texas can get into that official visit range with him since Kendall Gerville is coming in. Then Jimmy Callis, one of the top 2027 offensive linemen in the country. Not a name we've brought up here. I may have brought it up once in January because Kyle Flood stopped by the school. Jimmy Callis out of Pittsburgh Central Catholic, one of the power schools up in Pittsburgh, 6'6", 285, has been offered by about everybody. He is making his first unofficial visit to Texas this weekend. Obviously, Felix Ojo's on campus. We're expecting Jet Washington, a few other guys to come through around this OT7 7-on-7 tournament in Dallas. But 3 elite defensive line prospects on campus this weekend. There's going to be a lot of talent on campus this weekend. But the big visit weekend is April 12th coming up. That's when you're going to see a lot of guys on campus.
A lot of guys on campus that weekend, and it is combined with Texas's coaching school that weekend. So Texas will also have roughly 1,000 high school coaches milling around DKR that weekend too. So should be very, very interesting to watch what transpires there. Hey, Jerry, when you said Petal, I'm sure you meant Petal, Mississippi.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. Corey Wells, Petal, Mississippi.
That's the one that's just right outside of Hattiesburg. 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah. And then next weekend, I believe, will be Draylen McCoy from Tupelo, Mississippi. Should be on an unofficial, his first unofficial visit to Texas next weekend as well.
Well, guys, last week. What you got?
LSU 4-star plus wide receiver commit Jabari Mack and his entire family is back on campus this weekend. I should have led with that. I don't know why I was thinking D-line. I posted that on TexasFootball.com as well. Jabari Mack, the recruitment has not slowed down since his commitment to LSU. All the schools are still recruiting him. Ohio State official visit May 30th, June 2nd. A&M the 6th through 8th. Texas the 13th through 15th. And then LSU the 20th through 22nd. But Mack and his family scheduled to be on campus today, tomorrow, a little bit as well this weekend. And I also think they may be back on April 26th. Texas is going to fight LSU to the end on Jabari Mack. They really like him. I don't think Ojo's going to make a decision. I think he's going to go through his process.
And that was Casey asking if Felix Ojo was going to be tried to be locked up this weekend by the Longhorns. Jerry, you feel pretty confident a lot of these recruitments going into the summer at the very least. Is that's what it feels like, because they're setting up unofficial visits to come back to make official visits. There's a rare circumstance where a Nick Robertson wants to get it done because he's been, leaning this way for, a year and a half, essentially.
Look, if Texas led with NIL, some more of these might get done, but that's not the way Sark recruits. He wants to know. They want to have a very good feel about these guys. Do they really want to be at Texas, or is this an NIL recruitment? And Texas has passed on a lot of NIL recruitments.
Solely NIL. Yeah.
Solely. If you lead with NIL, a lot of times that slows the process down with Sark in Texas. So I think a lot of these highly ranked guys that are on the board, I'd be surprised if you see many of those guys fall publicly Texas way right now. I think things are going to play out.
Well, last week we looked at win totals, if y'all remember, for A&M, Texas, and Oklahoma. CBS Sports actually put out an article where they, gave their best prediction on over and under. So let's continue that today, but with some new teams. And let's start with Georgia. The over-under set from Vegas is 9.5, and CBS, a high believer in Georgia as they only have one loss, and that's at Tennessee. Of course, Georgia does play Texas again this year.
Look, I'm on record. I think Georgia lost more than Texas. I know why they're on the over-under, because look at the schedule at home. Look, they have a pretty good home schedule. Obviously, Florida's a neutral site game in Jacksonville, but they have a pretty good home schedule because Alabama and Texas go to Athens this year. And last year, those were on the road. Georgia had a really tough schedule last year, actually, when you looked at it. They're at Tennessee, obviously, at Mississippi State, at Auburn. But that road schedule is not as daunting as it was last year, which could come at a really good time for Georgia, Bobby, because they lost impact difference makers on defense, and a lot of them at all three levels off that team last year.
I've been watching some and hearing Kirby Smart talk the last couple of weeks. I've been following Georgia just to see what I thought they might have this year. I think that he is resigned to the fact that he can't build a roster like he had in 2021.
Correct.
He just doesn't think that may be possible anymore with the proliferation of NIL. I mean, he had really stacked the roster so ridiculously on defense that he could literally figure that out. And so he's going a different direction. I think he's still going to have the top line players. If I'm Georgia, my question right now is how am I going to score the football next year? Because I'm not a believer in Gunnar Stockton as a starting quarterback. I don't think Tennessee is necessarily a loss for them, but I can tell you right now, Alabama might be, Ole Miss might be, Florida's going to be tough, Texas will be tough, and Georgia Tech's going to be tough. I mean, they went to 7 overtimes with Georgia Tech. I could see this Georgia team not winning 10, 11 games very easily. I think it's going to be how well their offense plays and if their defense stands the test of time. Right, Jerry? Like they have been so good at replacing elite players with elite players, and I think they have one more run of that. But I don't know if they have the depth they once did. So if they get an injury of a Jalen Walker or a Michael Williams in some form or fashion, can they sustain that level? So I think that's going to be a fair question.
I think the other thing is the portal too. It's hard to keep all these to the stacked roster, but I want to go through what Georgia actually lost off their team and why I'm actually may take the under on this. They lost Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, Malachi Starks, 3 potential first-round picks at all 3 levels of the defense. And Jalen Walker's a great football player. They lost 4 offensive line starters, Tate Ratledge, All-American, Jared Wilson. Those guys tested through the roof at their positions at the Combine. Dylan Fairchild, the other guard, and the offensive tackle, right tackle, Xavier Truss. They also lost on the linebacker, Smile Mondon, who's a great cover linebacker, will be a top 3-round pick. They lost ETN, but Nate Frazier will be better at running back. But on the D-line, they lost Ingram Dawkins. So they lost a 5-tech who was a really good player draft pick. Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson, their 2 interior run defenders. I mean, they lost Dominic Lovett, Darian Smith. We'll see what they do. Their portal guys do. But they lost 4 offensive lines. Ben Urisic is one of the 3 tight ends. But they lost 4 offensive line starters, 2 tremendous linebackers, all 4 starters on the defensive line. I mean, they lost a lot off that team. And I that's why I'm thinking I'm going to take the under 9-3 with them right now. I mean, that's a lot to lose, Bobby. Those are impact players across the board for them on both lines of scrimmage.
I just don't. And you know what's different too with them is they were more the focal point of the team than maybe even the Texas offensive line was that Texas loses and the Texas defensive front. So I can see where you're coming out of there. But look, they got to keep them off the speedway too.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a fast team in
America. An issue that's depleting his team depth at this point.
Whenever anybody asks who the fastest team in America is, fans, don't hesitate. Just say Georgia.
Yes.
People laugh and they'll know what you're talking about.
25 arrests in 24 months for them. He's got multiple issues there. I think talent is not as overwhelming as it once was. Let's put it that way. So what happens? I don't think he's the next Nick Saban. I'll put it that way. I think he's a very, very good coach, though.
Yeah.
The next thing that we're going to look at, fellas, is Florida Vegas has the over-under at 6.5. CBS thinks they scrape by that with 7 wins, with losses to LSU, Texas, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Ole Miss.
Not a lot of Billy Napier belief there. I mean, the schedule is tough once again, right? I mean, and maybe Oklahoma has a tougher schedule, but Florida again, that they have a really tough schedule when you look at it. At Miami, I mean, we'll see what they look like, but you know that's a tough schedule again. I mean, can Florida State possibly be as bad? Maybe. But at LSU, at A&M, at Ole Miss, at Kentucky, at Miami, they have a tough schedule once again. And maybe they pull it off. Maybe Lagway has a really good year. Obviously, somewhat injured this spring. I think Eugene Wilson, the slot receiver, how he comes back off his knee is going to be big. J. Michael Sturdivant out of portal. They have offensive weapons for Lagway. They just got to keep Lagway and those guys healthy, it seems like. But they lost some key guys, but not to the level of some other teams to me on defense. So I think I would take the over on Florida here. And I know the schedule's tough, but I'm thinking 8-4.
I don't know if that's a true bettable line, 6.5. If that's something I could really go bet, I would bet a lot of money on the over.
Well, you can.
That way I'm not yeah. My point being, I think they're going to win 9 games this year. I think as long as Lagway stays reasonably healthy, they've got, I mean, Jaden Ball is a great running back, okay, for this style of offense. DJ Lagway is a great quarterback for this style of offense, okay? They fit. And so you know they have talent on defense. It's just whether or not they can actually put it together ever. I think they're in at least 9. So I think their over and under should be 8.5. I'll just be blunt. I think they finished the season strong last year. I think you could see the pieces falling into place. Billy Napier has won at previous stops. So he's a better coach than maybe he has looked like at times at Florida early on because he didn't have a lot of help. If I'm betting big on someone there, I think Florida has a chance to win 9-10 games in the SEC. I really do. Like I think LSU, Texas. I think they go to A&M and beat A&M. I think they're going to play Georgia tight, just like they did last year. I think they're going to be better than Ole Miss. I mean, talk about a team that graduates heavily. How about Ole Miss? Got to restructure their entire defense. I think Florida's better than people are giving them credit for. And I've been that way for ever since I saw them late last year.
Vinny Sunseri does have a big job. They lost 7 defensive starters off that team at all 3 levels, 3 secondary guys. They're up the middle, run defenders, including the 458-pounder, 464, whatever he is.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and a really good linebacker in Shamar James. So they do have some work to do on defense. They're gonna have to score a lot, I think, more so. Which
I agree, Jerry, but they have the type of offense that can help that defense because they can pound the rock with Jaden Ball.
Yeah,
I mean up the middle, just they can squeeze the life out of games if they want to.
Yeah,
I'm a big believer in Florida. We'll see. I could end up being completely wrong, and Napier could be out the door. So that's why we talk about it, I guess.
Yeah. Who's our third one? This will be fun for the chat. This is going to be fun for the chat.
Our final one for today, fellas, is LSU over under set at 8.5. CBS has them losing 3 games: Clemson, Alabama, and Oklahoma of all teams, but all those are away games for the Tigers.
Tough road schedule. I mean, that's the first thing you look at with LSU is tough road schedule for them. And then at home, I mean, obviously they're home. They face Lagway and Sellers at Lenore Sellers at South Carolina. So 2 QBs who can nip you at home as well if they have really big games. But I mean, if you say it's a huge season for Brian Kelly is an understatement. This is a tough one. This is a tough one for me on the 8.5 number. Nussmeier in his second year will be better, but they lost a lot on their offensive line. He lost Mason Taylor, his kind of safety valve. But that offensive line losses, what are they going to look like? Brad Davis is going to have to do his best coaching job because Will Campbell gets all the notoriety. Okay, but they lost 4 offensive linemen that are projected to be drafted. 4, Emory Jones, Miles Frazier, and Garrett Dellinger. Dellinger's a maybe. But they lost 4 key guys on the offensive line, kind of like Texas did, Ohio State, and Georgia did. But their offensive line, I think, is going to be huge for them this season. Huge with that schedule.
I think this is I don't know what else she's going to do. I don't have like Brian Kelly is so hit or miss. Like he's hot or cold. You don't really know what you're going to get out of the gate with him and his teams. Some years he could be ranked really high and lay an egg. And other times he could be ranked somewhat low with expectations mediocre, and he runs them. He's not an easy coach to really track in that regard and understand what he's going to end up being. I will say this. I think for LSU, it's going to be more about the second year under their defensive coordinator. They got blown out a bunch this past year, in part because they brought over the guy, Blake, what's his name? Blake, I can't remember his last name. Blake Baker used to be a GA at Texas.
Yeah.
He came in from Missouri last year and tried to reconfigure the defense and just got off to a slow start, got some injuries, and then it got over the top of him, if that makes sense. It got to be too much. We'll see what that means, in my opinion, and whether or not Blake Baker can actually, if he brings them up a notch on defense, I think LSU is going to be a tough out. If not, I still don't know that Garrett Nussmeier can outscore people. I think he can try to outscore people. I think he can try, but when he tries too hard, he throws it to the other team too often. And that's my concern there. LSU has to be better on defense. Has to be better on defense.
I was going to say, Jackson Miles, this is what I was going to end my LSU thought with because I think you're on it. I think they may have had the best portal class in the country. Nick Anderson, got to stay healthy from Oklahoma, was a projected first, second round pick before last year. The wide receiver, Barrion Brown from Kentucky, had some real juice to their kick return game, got to hold on to the ball. The 2 edge guys they got are really good players. They beefed up their secondary quite a bit. They only took 1 OL, though, which is interesting. Patrick Payton at edge, I think, is going to be really good for them coming off the edge. They have they did some real work in the portal. Destin Hill from Florida State to receiver, number of defensive backs, number of edge players. And the hidden thing they have for their team, if you look at, okay, guys get injured. If Michael Van Buren's your back at quarterback, you're not in a bad place if something happens to Garrett Nussmeier. They did some real work in the portal. We'll see if it all comes together for them because the portal will definitely be the difference on this team.
They needed the portal on defense, in my opinion, as much as they did on offense. The defensive end from Florida State is a big one, in my opinion. Yeah. You mentioned Peyton. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, let's move on here. We have a super chat from Jack. Thank you, Jack, as always. We definitely appreciate you. He says, Coach Vic had a great pregame Final Four presser. He said that he has 3 things he looks for and needs to do recruit to a fit, retain, and develop. He also said that he stresses toughness. Do you see this in Sark?
I don't know if it's the same 3 things. Sark, and look, I'm supposed to talk. I will say this. I'm supposed to talk, or I'll just go ahead and give y'all what we're doing tomorrow for our Saturday conversation. Later today, I'm interviewing Blake Helm, Gunnar Helm's dad, for our Saturday morning conversation. And I wanted to talk to him about this. What his son went through this process and was developed at Texas. what is it? What does that mean? What does that really look like? Because I think that has been one of the secret sauces. I wouldn't say the full secret sauce, but that has been a difference between Steve Sarkisian and a couple of previous Texas head coaches. Charlie Strong, I thought he actually did a decent job of developing defensive players, not so much on offense. I thought Tom Herman did a decent job of just being a fairly astute, play caller at times, but not a great coach and not a guy that could retain that talent. That was Tom Herman's issue was retention more than anything else, because people just didn't like him. Kids didn't like him enough. I'm intrigued of what somebody like Blake Helm's going to talk about there, because I think that development is under seen, and then when you start talking about fit, what more of a fit do you have than a position like tight end? I don't know. This is a good question, Jack. I think I'm a little bit all over the place with my answer, and unfortunately, I'm sorry about that. But I guess my point is there are pieces of that I think that Sark does a little bit of all of that. The thing that I can't tell you is about the stressing of toughness. The one thing I would say that I've seen Sark do is he recruits a lot of skill players, no matter their size, and a lot of defensive players that play through contact. And it's kind of a hidden thing in football when you're evaluating a player. So does that show that sort of toughness? Not necessarily mental toughness, but idealistic toughness, right? If you play through contact, you're a little bit going to be a little bit tougher. I'm open on this, Jerry. It's a tough question because it's a very large one in my opinion.
Yeah, look, I think Sark says similar things, right? I think they may be done a different way. I think I will say this. So I think it's just done a little differently. I will say this, and Sean Miller and Sark are going to be very similar in that regard. I think the same three things will come out of Sean Miller's mouth, but I think it may just be done a little different way, if that makes sense. It is my thought on it, but yeah, that's my thought.
All right, Bobby, before we move on to some more questions here, can you tell everyone one last time about BKCW?
Yeah, absolutely. Today's show being brought to you by BKCW Insurance. Did your business have a frustrating insurance or employee benefits renewal? Most likely you didn't hear from your agent all year, and then right before it was time to renew, your agent delivered the bad news of a rate increase with no time to look for other options. When this happens, the agent is providing no value, and you're stuck in what we call the insurance trap. BKCW takes your business out of this trap by providing you with actual risk management consulting, not just price quoting. BKCW has risk consultants that specialize in many different industries, from construction and transportation companies to nonprofits, school districts. You'll get matched up with someone who knows your risk and then can help you escape the insurance trap. Get started with a free risk assessment at bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw to get started and get you and your business the support you deserve. We appreciate BKCW Insurance, Austin-owned, Texas-owned group very, very much for their ongoing sponsorship of Friday's Coffee and Football.
Okay, guys, let's jump over to some more questions here. And let's take this one from Joshua. He says, at 6'5", 200 pounds, do you expect Jet Washington to play safety in college?
I actually do, because I think he's that level athlete. I think he's that one of those rare guys. He's probably, let's say, will he actually measure 6'5" without shoes on? We'll see. But let's just say 6'4" and a quarter, 200 pounds. But he's got the athleticism. I mean, look, Jonah Williams is 6'3", 205, 210. I mean, so Jet Washington may be an inch and a quarter taller than him, maybe an inch and a half. But my point on that is they're very similar athletes. Like if Jet Washington walked out tomorrow and said, I want to play wideout, you'd say, okay. I mean, there are people that trained Jonah Williams has said they compared him to Keenan Allen if he played receiver. I think Jet Washington is that level athlete on the football field playing safety. So despite him being bigger, longer frame, I think if he's a 6'4" and a half, 215-pound guy, yeah, I think he can play safety. I think he's that level talent as an athlete.
And then our next question comes from Brendan. And Brendan says, Jerry, Bobby, am I crazy to think that the inside linebacker room is better or deeper than our edge room? No slight to either room. Both are legit, but just curious on your thoughts.
It's pretty stout. I mean, it's pretty darn stout, Jerry.
I don't disagree. I mean, look, edge I think is tremendous because it may have the best defensive player in college football this year if Colin Simmons stays healthy. And I say that for all guys. You got to stay healthy. So I'm not saying he's got an issue. But you just got to stay healthy and ascend. I mean, if he does, watch out. But look, I'm on record. I love the linebacker group as a whole. And one of the things I love about them is the versatility. How many guys they have that can play different spots. I mean, you have multiple guys that can play multiple linebacker spots. And I think that's when you have a tremendous linebacker room. I mean, if you look at Georgia last year, Jalen Walker could play middle linebacker and roll out the edge. Smile Mondon was an inside linebacker early in his career, moved to outside linebacker. Same with Chaz Chambliss. That's what you want to have. And that's when I think you have a great linebacker core and room in a program is when you have, you got to have the size and the speed ratios and the length ratios, arm lengths underrated at linebacker. But do you have that type of versatility? Do you look up and down your room and say, we can do a lot of different things with all these guys. Now, the inside backers have to be really instinctive. I've always said it's underrated that people don't talk about enough the instincts to play inside backer. But I think Leonga Lafau's an instinctive guy there. But I think Texas has so much versatility at linebacker in numbers. I mean, I think I've heard Elijah Barnes is having a good spring. And it's going to be hard for a freshman to really break through to get major snaps on this group, but that's the type of depth that Texas is building.
And then our next question.
A follow-up with this, Dave actually has a good question.
Go ahead.
Jonathan Cunningham was one of the reasons North Crowley won state. Does he see any time at linebacker? He probably needs a year to get bigger because now we'll see, but he didn't make those huge weight gains right out of the gate like Ty Anthony Smith did. So I think that's something to watch. But Jonathan Cunningham, I love as a player. I mean, a guy's football intelligent and has an understanding of the game. And Coach Gates, Ray Gates, was on here and talked about this. He played him at safety. He played him at nickel. He played him at linebacker because he could handle it all. Those guys tend to be really good linebackers, outside backers, Bobby, because they're good in coverage. They see the game really well. They have good eyes, obviously. But you can't move around a guy like that, like Ray Gates did on a team like North Crowley, if you don't think your guy really understands the game at a pretty high level.
And our next question comes from Chris McDonald. What are the odds that Sark lands another number one class this year?
1 in 5, 1 in 6. What do you think, Jerry?
It's hard to predict, because so much of it depends on the final rankings of prospects. It really does. I mean, because, if a couple of guys go from a top 54 star to a final ranked 5-star in the final rankings, that can take your class from number 3 to number 1 or number 4 to number 1. It's a point system. Do I think Sark will sign another top 5 class? I bet on that. Where will it end up? I can't say. I think we need to see where all these player rankings kind of finalize because that impacts your class ranking so much, Bobby. It just does.
I think it's 1 in 5, 1 in 6. I mean, that's basically the odds because that's where Texas is at as a program right now. They're a top 5 program in the country. And they've proven that 3 consecutive years under Steve Sarkisian with his recruiting classes. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I will say this. They have the quarterback in this class to help them get a few extra points, maybe more than they got last year with KJ Lacey, or we're giving credit for, regardless of whether KJ Lacey ends up being a great player or not for Texas. That's something that is going to be baked in that I think will be really, really strong. You know, I am not a guy that sits there and says you have to have the number one recruiting class. I think that can be a little much at times. What I am a big believer in, though, and have been since I got into this business 30 plus years ago, is stringing together recruiting classes.
Yeah.
And the importance of that. Even one slip up, 1 year slip up where you go from number 3 or number 4 to number 15. To give you an example, it may not on its surface seem like it's a big slip up, okay? But it is. Because then you're backfilling and oversigning prospects at a position in the next class to make up for what you didn't get the previous one. Sark, for example, let's take defensive tackle as an example on that. The one thing that Sark didn't do, he didn't oversign defensive tackles last year. Probably wanted to at some level and could have if he really pushed on it. But just like when they had the Pancake Factory group, they didn't go on to their second group that easily. So with Sark's mentality, I think they can actually, drop down every so often, a year or two, for like 6 or 7 or 8, but don't go down to 15, because you go down that low, then you're having a true drop-off in talent level joining the team. Look, I don't know if they'll finish number 1, is my point. As long as they're in the top 5, let's talk. And as long as they're addressing needs and getting talented, highly talented players. Like, look, Ryan Wingos, Colin Simmons, Anthony Hills, Arch Mannings. Let's keep signing those guys. Okay, that there are a lot of talented players in college football. There are a few supremely talented players. Texas is getting a lot. They're hitting their mark on the good players that are going to be NFL players. They need the Xavier Crowells of the world. That's where this thing can turn and will turn, and that's where a national championship happens, in my opinion. So it's in the edges where things happen like that. And that's part of that is whether or not you have a number 1 class, I guess.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by BKCW. We want to thank them, along with Mando and Timeline, for sponsoring today's show. Of course, thank you all for tuning in. The great questions and the super chats. Remember, we can't get to all the questions, but you can get your questions answered. All you have to do is head on over to ontexasfootball.com. If you're not a member, become one very easily. Use promo code OTFOG. You'll lock in an annual subscription for just $49.95. Got a great community going on over there. It's really building and taking off. So come join us and jump in on that. Get your questions answered and chat with other Longhorn fans. Bobby, what's later today?
We've got a 1 o'clock live stream. Rod Baber is going to be leading that for us. We also have Bases Loaded. Blake, you and Jeff Howe and I think CJ Vogel get together to talk a little baseball this weekend. We talked that today with Kendall Rogers. We appreciate him coming on from D1 Baseball earlier today. But obviously, 6 o'clock tonight, women's Final Four out of Tampa. They take on South Carolina. We'll be watching that. From a recruiting perspective and kind of on TexasFootball.com, David Bailey is going to be something we're watching, as well as all these guys that are visiting campus this weekend. Jerry's got a number of those guys kind of honed in on, CJ as well as Jeff Howe. So trying to figure out all of that right now.
And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell so you're notified anytime that we post content. That way you don't miss a thing. And between that and on TexasFootball.com, we got you covered around the clock. Hope you all have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday morning. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and